by 2050. Even if those houses are not reserved for the rich, which of course is a choice that we have, but even anybody would like to have housing. So if we have the population, which is going to be 50% more at least by another 50 years' time, how can we survive?
Well, the point is the poor housing is being broken down, whether it be for highways or the sealing operations in the city. I don't think it's the housing of the poor that's being considered. But as far as the issue of buildings are concerned, as far as the issue of homes are concerned, Mumbai, such controversies are taking place over the mill lands right now, over the redevelopment of slums. New vocabulary keeps coming up. I think the most important issue is land is too precious to be left to a global financial market to decide allocation. That's what's happening right now. SEZs are one way, but underhand, as the subprime crisis had made mortgages worthless in the United States, all that hedge funds and investment money is coming to India to grab the land. I think we need a regulation of this. We need the government to wake up to put a stop to this, both because it's destroying fertile soils and fertile land we need for food, but it is taking land beyond the reach of an honest, hardworking middle-class person or honest, hardworking farmer. You can't turn land into a commodity. It is time we turned land back into our old slogan that the Bhudan movement started, Sabhi Bhumi Gopal Ki.
Yeah, but that is correct. The one is the class conflict between rich and the poor, as you said. But also, as you said earlier, when we talk about Punjab issue, that underlying crisis was really an ecological one. So if you look at this again as an ecological issue, in which can land sustain 1.6 or 1.8 billion population? Don't you need a population control measure of a very serious nature?
Well, I've done a lot of work on this, Suresh, and my last book called Earth Democracy, which is a translation of our old concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, has a whole chapter on this. If you look at our own country, India, where did the population get regulated? In Kerala, where land rights of the poorest person were recognized. The hut on which the poor woman in Trivandrum lived, that land was her sovereign land. That is what created population control. If you look at the global picture, the explosion of population took place in England when the enclosures of the commons took place, when land was taken away from people. In the case of India, till the British took over, there was stable population. Population explosion started when the British introduced their own zamedari, revenue accumulation and all that. The point is, if you make a living on land, that has already built into it a contraceptive pill. Because there's this much of my family I can manage. When you're uprooted and you're on the streets and you're in the slums and you don't know how many days you'll get to work, you don't know how many children will survive till old age, your children become your capital. And in fact, by uprooting people from the land, we are creating a larger and larger propensity for people to have security in working hands in an unstable marketplace. But the land question in India, I think it's the heart of the political issue right now. And this morning at our conference on Gandhi, globalization and climate change, a very interesting figure was given by a former Planning Commission member and Secretary of Government of India, S.P. Shukla. He worked out that the current debate is assuming that because agriculture is contributing 18% of GDP, let 18% of the population be reduced let the population in agriculture be reduced to 18%, which in his calculation works out to 380 million working people being thrown out of the rural sector to be absorbed somewhere. On the basis of how they have got absorbed in industry in the last 2 or 3 decades, about 2 lakhs a year, he has worked out that it would take 385 years for the uprooted rural population to be absorbed in urban industrial employment. So what's the solution? The solution is improving the livelihoods of our farmers by stopping this economy of theft. I have written a book called Stolen Harvest. Now, all the hard work of the farmer is leaving them victims of suicide because the prices of what they were producing is falling, the cost of what they produce is increasing. The second thing we definitely need to do, and that's where Gandhi really comes back, Gandhi had this dream of village economies, village industrialization, chairs like this made at the village level, paper, handmade paper made at the village level. What is it that we cannot make at the village level? After all, everything, all natural resources come from the countryside. And we now live under the illusion that wealth is created in the stock market?
Yeah, but you think that maybe the linking the people's right to land will bring down the population, but still we need to definitely stabilize the population at a level which will not be very high from what it is today?
I really see the absolutely unprecedented increase in population as a symptom of an ecological and social instability. Just as in the rich countries, people have become too rich to have children and they're having zero population growth and negative population growth. They cannot even reproduce their own societies. Because of our conditions of poverty of the people, the opposite is happening. It's part of an imbalance. We have to remove that imbalance. And the first thing we have to remove in that imbalance is the imbalance of natural resource control. If land is concentrated in the hands of the few, we are going to get not just more and more unstable population scenarios, we're going to get more and more unstable political scenarios. Look at what's happening in Maharashtra right now. We will get more of the Gujar riots. We will get all of this kind of political, social instability. So the second thing we have to do is focus an economy on the future. An economy focused on the future thinks of children. When we think of children, we ensure that we create an economy that meets the needs of our children, not the needs, not the greed of a handful of people today. The discounting of the future is what is part of population instability.
I know, but at the same time, we'll have to still agree on a figure which is sustainable for this, because ultimately, you can't leave it to the market forces that they will stabilize the population, because this theory would actually conclude that finally we'll have to, market forces will really decide.
No, but market forces can't decide, they should not be allowed to decide, but I don't think arithmetic can decide either. And arithmetic can't decide for this simple reason, and you know the figures much better than me. If a tiny handful of Americans can use 45% of the world's resources, and if a non-sustainable lifestyle requires 5 planets, then it's not just an issue of numbers, it's an issue of how we live. Now, India has had 1 billion people. We didn't make a mess of ourselves, but in this last decade, we've ruined every river. We have cut every tree. My heart breaks each time I travel from here to the airport in Dehradun. No matter where you go, every tree is being cut. Mysore to Bombay, ancient growth. We used to plant trees along the highway to give shelter to the passerby. Today, we cut the trees so that we can drive a little faster. Now, that basically means there's no fixed arithmetic on numbers, but there's an ethics of how we live on this planet, and we have to reduce our footprint, both by stabilizing our numbers and definitely shrinking our resource per consumption and reducing our energy demands. Yeah. I find it a shame that in 2007, 2008, when India should be showing the way to the world for a prudent living that is more enriching, we are aping the worst of China, the worst of America, and saying now we are growing.
Well, another very passionately you always fight is globalization. I've always seen your writings, your what you profess. You always speak against globalization. Tell me something. How do you think in these modern times is it really possible for a country, any country, to be totally isolated, to live on their own without any regard to outside organization? Is it really possible?
The issue of globalization is not an issue of being linked to other countries. After all, we exported spices to the West long before the West could come and conquer us for our spices and our cotton and our textile.
The East India Company essentially came for spices.
They came for spices. Now, East India Company was a very different form of trade than what we traded before they came to us. Right. We exported textiles before the East India Company. Yeah. We exported spices before the East India Company. So international trade is not new to India, and India could never be insular because we have so much to give to the world. Yeah. We have very little to receive. We have a lot to give. The point about the current economic globalization is it is dishonest. The reason I fight so passionately against the rules of WTO is every rule is a dishonest rule. It's dishonest for a Monsanto to say they created a seed when all they did was steal our wheat. It is dishonest for Cargill to say they're being competitive when they're harvesting all the subsidies of the world to then play the market according to what is convenient to them. It is dishonest for the United States to ask us to open up our borders while they keep their borders closed. That's why I say let's have genuine, mutual interdependence. Let's create the rules of that. WTO doesn't embody them.
So you are actually talking about only the way the globalization is working. You're not against the concept of globalization per se. What you're saying is the way it operates, that is something which needs modification, it needs changes.
I'm a global citizen,
Yeah.
and I'm a member of the World Future Council, which we have just launched in India. I have been part of the International Forum on Globalization, a coalition of citizens to watch WTO. I believe in universalism.
Yeah.
I believe in internationalism, and I believe in a fair, ethical, humane, ecologically sustainable globalization.
So we need sort of a changing the rules, the way globalization operates, but
We
not
need to
against
change
the
the rules.
globalization.
Absolutely.
You know, you organize a very interesting program. I was quite impressed looking at the theme in which you will try to link Gandhi, globalization and climate change. How did you try to link the three? What is the relevance actually?
Well, actually, the three have been sitting in separate boxes. So the climate change community goes to Bali, IPCC gets a Nobel Prize, but they keep talking about the carbon in the atmosphere without looking at where did the carbon start. Globalization is the biggest reason for driving up the use of fossil fuel. If every chapati we eat every day has to be shipped from Argentina to us, if every clothing we wear is not from our weavers but is from a factory exploiting its labor in China, that is pushing up the carbon dioxide emissions. That's why globalization is linked to climate change. And Gandhi is linked as a solution because Gandhi gave us the antidote. He taught us how to generate wealth at the last level by generating higher levels of productivity and employment through Swadeshi. He also gave us the political tool to think of different rules, not the rules of WTO imposed on us on behalf of giant corporations who are accountable and totally democratically unaccountable anywhere. He gave us Swaraj as a path of genuine democracy. But to me, the most important part of what he gave us was allowing our conscience to wake us up when we know injustice is taking place. And today the time has come where every citizen of India needs to act as a satyagrahi in Gandhi's spirit towards non-violence, because if we don't sharpen these instruments that we have inherited of celebrating simplicity, not feeling so inferior that you must run to the shopping mall every day, our children are being made to feel inferior if they're not wearing brand names.
Yeah. So Gandhiji said that how can one sleep peacefully when he knows that his neighbor is going hungry?
Absolutely.
And that's what we really need to think about. Tell me just lastly, because we could like to go on and on talking to you, such an interesting conversation. Tell me, how do you foresee this type of a movement that you are spearheading, many other civil society organizations working? Do you think, what is the future for this organization? Do you think you'll keep fighting all your life and hoping that someday the government will wake up? Or you think you should take over the government, change the way government thinks? What is the future for the civil society movement?
Well, as far as I'm personally concerned, some governments are changing. Uttaranchal government has declared an organic policy. I am very closely working with the government of Kerala, where a new organic agriculture policy is being worked on. But I'm also an international chair of an International Commission on the Future of Food, and internationally governments are changing. 43 governments in Europe have signed an agreement with us on GMO-free zones, that they will not accept GMO seeds and GMO products. So governments are changing. The problem is centralized governments are more influenced by greed. And what we need is a shift from an economics of greed to an economics of sharing, an economics of short term to an economics of permanence. On that, I feel if the world does not make that change, it's going to go up in flames either because of climate change and global warming, or go up in flames because of conflict. So there's only one way if we have to live into the future as a species, as society, and that is sustainably, using resources prudently, sharing them more equitably, and celebrating life in our simplicity.
In fact, Vandana, all religions agree on one thing, that ultimately the whole mankind is going to just get wiped out. So probably what you said, it's only a choice whether climate change should wipe it out, or our own action should wipe it out, or something else should wipe it out.
No, there is a third choice, that we do our bit to continue to hold the precious life we have inherited and hold it for the future.
That's for the Gandhian way. I hope you succeed in your mission in changing the mindset of the people so that they pursue a different path that you talked about. I'm thankful to you for talking to me and also my other viewers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suresh.
This was Dr. Vandana Shiva talking to us in Top Shot on how we should try to change our thinking to make a living a better way of life than what we are doing today. Next week, we'll be joined by another distinguished personality like Dr. Shiva, who will be talking to us about some other issue. Come back next week. This is Suresh Prabhu bidding you goodbye in Top Shot. Bye-bye. Good night.